cultural impacts of Nehruvian socialism. Now, today's talk is kind of continuation of the same, actually based on his book, which is India, a Cultural Revival or Decline. And this will be a series of talks. Today is the first part. So I will ask Bharatji to introduce the talk, and I will just give a short introduction of Dr. Bharat Gupta. He is a retired professor from the University of Delhi. He is a classicist, theatre theorist, sitar and surbahar player, musicologist, cultural analyst, and newspaper columnist. Through his books, articles, and lectures spanning 35 years, he has shared his immense and extensive knowledge on arts, society, and culture. And we are so humbly, grateful to you for coming to Sangam Talks and sharing with us. Thank you so much. आपसे बात करना ही half an hour conversation with you is so enlightening. So I'll hand it over to him. Welcome everybody.
Namaste everybody. I begin with a small Mangalacharan in praise of Shiva. Ganga Taranga Ramaniya Jata Kalapam Gauri Nirantar Vibhushita Vama Bhagam Narayana Priyam Ananga Madapaharam Varanasi Purapatim Bhaja Vishwanatha. So we all seek the blessings of the Lord of Varanasi, Bhagwan Shiva, and we begin today's adventure, my reactions with you, the audience of Sangam Talks. I'm a great admirer of Rahul Diwan and the series of talks that he has organized. It's a great resource on contemporary Indian Hindu civilization right now. It is something to be proud of, and I have been trying to support it right from the beginning, and I'm committed to support it ever and ever. So, what do I have for you this morning, friends? I'm going to talk to you about my book. This is the book. It was shown the cover earlier by Aparna. You see here, it's called India, a Cultural Decline or Revival. And it has two women on it. One a city woman and the other a village woman. And it's a photograph I took myself somewhere in the woods of Orissa, and it reflects really the repository, the repository of India, because women make up India. And then we have women from cities, because India consists today of city, a huge number of middle class, and India has people living in villages. And so much of the city today is inhabited by village people. Unfortunately, the village part of India has been neglected all these years because Jawaharlal Nehru had planned everything for India under the Soviet model, which was concentrating on the city, unlike what his mentor Gandhiji would have liked. That is to say that concentrating on developing India which is in the villages. So in spite of all the socialism and communism and all kinds of theories about Daridra Narayan and Ram Rajya and whatever, we have not been able to take care of where our India resides, that is the gram or the villages. Now this book of mine, India, a Cultural Decline or Revival, poses a question. Is India undergoing a big cultural decline? Is it going to disappear from the face of earth as a great civilization, largely as a Hindu civilization? or after another struggle in the 20th and the 21st century, after independence, is it going to be a reassertion of an ancient way of life that traces back its history to at least 7,000 years ago? So that's the question that I put forth. Now, when most people analyze India, when they talk about something very fashionable like the idea of India, you must have heard this phrase, idea of India, and several people have written books about it and articles about it. And there are famous people who mention idea of India. Everybody says this is my idea of India. Then we talk about India only in terms of Western sociology. That is, what are the classes, what are the religions, what are the languages, and what are the majority people, what are the minority people, what is the balance between the ethnic groups, who are poor, who are less poor, who are very poor. Who are people who are native and who are people who are foreigner or represented by values of a foreign civilization. So this is the way the modern sociology along with modern anthropology analyzes things. And as you know, this is largely the way the colonizers analyze the colonies in terms of what is called ethnography. Graphy, you know, is painting or making a scene or making a picture, and ethnos is a tribe or a jati. It's a Greek word, ethnos, and there were many ethnoi or many tribes in ancient Athens who lived there, and it is from there that this term came into modern discourse, where people started describing a set of people who had a particular religion, language, features, physical features, dress, clothing, etc., all their way of life together, all the details about it, and that makes up the ethnography of the people or the identity of the people. And the best example for ethnography of people world over is found not in any university website, but it is found on the website of a Christian organization called the Joshua Project, or the Unreached People, where the Christians who want to proselytize the unchristian people of the world, where they have made a map of all kinds of people who live all over the world. And it's something you should go and see in order to understand how they work, and also for your own information. Then they have divided the whole world into two segments: those people who have been converted or half converted to Christianity, and those who have not been touched so far, or who have not converted and who are waiting to be saved, like Hindus and Muslims and people from tribal areas, etc. So that site exemplifies the net result of how the Western world thinks. They think of the non-Western worlds in terms of a people whose lives have to be changed, whose lives have to be saved, whose lives have to be altered, controlled, for whatever reason, religious reasons, consumerist reasons, business reasons, military reasons, no matter what, but that's the approach. And according to that, the Western civilizations made their systems of study for the people of Africa and Asia and Australia, etc. And of course, we Indians. So this is the way our academics, our Sunil Khilnanis and Shashi Tharoors and all these people, they just study India along those lines, purely Western paradigm. Now I have brought in something very different. How do you look at society? How do you look at humankind? How do you look at humankind anywhere, and especially in India? So for that, I have a different parameter, and this parameter comes from a verse which is found in the Mahabharata. Now this verse talks about what a person should do, and belonging to a particular sect, not an ethnographic sect, but belonging to a particular section of existence, a particular area of life, how should a person react? So what they say in Mahabharata, the shlok is something like this: Ekam tyajet kulasyarthe. Ekam tyajet kulasyarthe. Gramarthe kulam tyajet. Ekam tyajet kulasyarthe. For the sake of kula or the family, you should give up the interest of the individual. Ekam. The interest of the family is higher than the interest of the individual. Ekam tyajet kulasyarthe. Gramarthe kulam tyajet. For the sake of gram. Gram means a village, a city, these days a village city or a huge habitation. Ekam tyajet kulasyarthe gramarthe kulam tyajet. So the village or the city or the habitat is higher. The interest of that is higher than that of the kula or the family. So individual, family and habitat or gram. Three things we have now. Ekam tyajet kulasyarthe gramarthe kulam tyajet. Gramam tyajet janapadasyarthe. For the sake of janapad, janapad could mean a huge region or maybe even a modern nation. For the sake of the interest of janapad, you should give up the interest of the town or the village or the habitat. The interest of the nation is bigger than that. And finally he says, Ekam tyajet kulasyarthe, gramarthe kulam tyajet, gramam tyajet janapadasyarthe, atma arthe prithvim tyajet. And for the sake of atma or atma or self, not the individual, the atma, the spiritual self, you give up the whole earth. So now there are 6 entities or 6 divisions. Ek, individual, kul, family, gram or town, janapad or the large area or the nation, prithvi, the earth, the globe, the mother earth, and finally atma. Atma is the jivatma, the individual, which is other than the physical individual with a name like Bharat or Arpana or Shruti or somebody. So these are the 6 entities which make up existence everywhere. And this is not describing India. This is not an idea of India. This is an idea of existence, human existence. And Mahabharata is talking about that the interest of Atma is the highest, the individual is the lowest, and these are the categories in between. And I have tried to analyze modern India in terms of these 6 categories, and modern India which I have seen through my own eyes. I was born 1946, and since 1955, with the blessings of the Almighty, I still remember everything, at least remembered when I wrote this book. So I know everything that happened in India from 1955, when Chacha Nehru gave the great speech for 1 hour in Ramlila grounds in 1957, after, when 100 years of the first rebellion against the British had concluded, 100 years celebration. So from that turning point in Indian history, modern Indian history, till, let us say, the present time, till the Kisan Andolan, which is happening on our streets right now, I remember, and I have in this book tried to put everything. This book was published in 2008, but things have not changed since then. Last 12 years, there has only been change of political power, but there has not been any substantial change within the country in terms of culture. So these 6 things are the categories through which I analyze modern India. It is very different from Nehru's idea of India, palimpsest, Karwan aate gaye, Hindustan banta gaya, that we are a set of people who are a product of all the invaders who came from the Aryans, and then the Indo-Greeks and the Greeks, and then the Huns and the Kushanas and the Arabs and all those people downwards, so that we are a palimpsest culture, that we are a sandwich culture or a hotel culture, where everybody finds a place to stay and everybody starts calling India their own. They became one of us, as one of the great secularists is never tired of saying, that all these people, they came from outside, but they became one of us. Of course, there can't be a greater lie than that. Otherwise, why should have India been partitioned in 1947 if they became one of us? It's so simple. Now, coming to the specifics, what do? I have divided this book in 3 parts. Each part has 2 parts. Along the same, Ek, Kul, Gram, Janapad, Prithvi and Atma. So, out of the 3 parts, today I am going to speak on Eka and Kula. Then in the next lecture I will speak on Gram and Janapad. You see how the Janapad is the other. And then in part 3 I will speak on Prithvi and Atma. So obviously Prithvi and Atma would be a purely philosophical discourse. It will talk about Indian diaspora, it will talk about metaphysical issues, the issues that are philosophies that are domineering the world today. In part 2 I will talk about the villages, the small cities, the social problems, reservation, Varnashram problems, politics of compensation, etc., language. And today, the first part, I will speak about something very significant, a little sophisticated, but most essential. I will talk about purely cultural issues, the universe of Indian thought, the ritual universe. Then education in India, which has been now for almost 170 years without art, totally without art. Then the total neglect, as a matter of fact, castigation of Sanskrit, which is the soul of all Indian thought and languages. Then the conflict between Abrahamic religions and Hinduism. And then the disappearance of the teacher from our society. I mean, we have schools by hundreds and thousands of schools and teachers in them, but teacher, the guru, though the one who had a personal relationship and responsibility with the learner in India, that is not there. And then I'll talk about the aspirations of modern Indians. And I don't have very complimentary things to say there, because I describe the modern Indian as a rampant consumerist. He reminds me more of the mythological Yayati who took away the youth of his son. And he reminds me more of Kansas, because Kansa was the one who liked to kill and blot out the next generation. And then I will also in the end talk about how we have given up the whole notion of giving up or tyag or working for something which is much higher than our mundane concerns. So let's begin now with what is called the ritual universe. Now, the secularism in India started with castigating Hinduism, and Hinduism here means something very broad. It just doesn't mean Vaishnavas and Vedic followers, or those who do yagyas or go to temples, the so-called Vedic people. No, I would say the people of India as a whole with indigenous religions, which includes Jains and Buddhas and Pashupatas and all denominations of people and all philosophy. They followed what was called, for enlightenment, for understanding, for knowledge, they believed that you had to perform ritual. That life is nothing unless you do not perform rituals. Now, what happens in the 19th century is that Christianity comes along and it starts teaching us that all ritual is nonsense. You see, this was the Christian bias. This is the way they approached the ancient Greek culture and Greek religion when Christianity came to Greece. They said, no, this is a false religion. It's lost in ritual. It is lost in worship of gods in temple, in offering sacrifices, in celebrating elaborate festivals, in having all kinds of gatherings in which people bring in the gods and spend time with them. So they said all this is wrong, this is erroneous, this is devilish. This is how they taught the Greeks, and they slowly, over a period of 300 to 400 years, they wiped out the ancient Greek culture, because they said this is false, this is devilish, this is away from truth. And then they established the Christian empire very solidly by 4th or 5th century, which lasted for almost 800 to 900 years. And then when the Turks came in, it fell. Now, the same thing was attempted by Christians in India in 19th century. So they said that Hinduism is all caught in empty ritual, in rituals which are very erroneous, which are highly sensuous, which have too much sex in it, like dancing in temples and women wearing beautiful dresses, etc. So it was a very severe form of Protestant Christianity, which talked about God in the heaven as pure God who had to be followed, whose commandments had to be followed, and men had to become good and spiritual and elevated by thinking of Him as somewhere up in the heavens. This was the paradigm they gave. Now, Indians who were at that time fully in the grip of the British Empire, they succumbed to this intimidation. And we developed a whole theory that, we are also very pure people. We are Vedic people. So we had Arya Samaj, we said, yes, all worship of murtis and vigrahas and going to temple is pakhanda, it is wrong. So Dayanand Saraswati went around the country telling people that this is something which is not part of the Veda, and your pure religion is doing yajna, and you should do yajna. And we believe in one God, we don't believe in many gods, and that one God is Param Pita Parmeshwar, as he translated it into Hindi. So when he would translate any verse of the Vedas, like the very first verse of the mantra, rather, Agni Mede Purohitam, then he will translate Agni as Parampita Parmeshwar. I desire the Supreme Lord, Parampita. The word Agni is thrown out, So this was the great intimidation which happened to Indian thinkers, contemporary Indian thinkers. And then from Arya Samaj, along with it, we had all kinds of Brahmo Samaj, Dev Samaj, various other movements in Bengal, who all emphasize that worship of a god or a Devi or a Kali or a Vishnu was superstitious, was backward and bad. So the educated class at that time, symbolized by our Vivekananda, it denounced all that. And so the young Vivekananda, he went to the yogi and the worshipper of Kali, Ramakrishna, and he said, your God is false. It's only when Ramakrishna made him realize and gave him a darshan of Kali that he understood that his education under the British from, whichever college he went to, perhaps Presidency College at that time, was false. So there were very few people who understood this even at the time of Vivekananda, and Vivekananda had to start a whole movement. And then there were people like Sri Aurobindo and later on several others who wanted to cure the newly educated 19th century Indian of their Protestant Christian prejudices brought into Hinduism. But they did not succeed fully. Somewhere they failed. They did not succeed because we had other leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, who again thought that ritual was not the right thing. You see, this education of anti-ritual universe, that ritual is bad, went very deep, and it is present to this day. To this day, we don't realize what is the value of our temples. Now, ritual, briefly speaking, is an act of knowledge which is done by doing three things at the same time. By putting your mind, by putting your body, and by putting your speech into the same thing. Manasa vacha karmana. By man. So ritual means if I worship God, if I give bath to my Shiva, then I am doing it just as a mother does it to the child, or just as a loving wife does it to the husband, or the other way around. It's something with your mind in it, your relationship, with your heart and mind in it, manasa. And then you speak. Just as a mother mutters very loving, kind words to the little infant, similarly, the devotee sings praises in mantras, whether it is Vedic mantras or shlokas or music, to the deity, to the person. And one does it through the body. One actually physically does the whole effort from A to Z. So manasa vacha karmana. When you put your whole senses, all your mind into that act of having a relationship, then that is ritual. Now the Christians, of course, do it very partially. It's not as if the Christians don't do it. They have a service. They speak something in praise of Jesus. And they also follow rituals. They follow the ritual of Eucharist. That is, they give bread saying that this is the flesh of Jesus, take it, partake it. They give wine saying that this is the blood of Jesus. So eat this bread and drink this wine so that Jesus enters you. So they have their rituals, but they say that our rituals are true rituals and the rituals of the heathens are false rituals. Now, Indians have internalized this to this day. That is why even a highly pro-Hindu government like that of Shri Narendra Modi is not able to free the temples from state control. Because there is an internal roadblock. That you don't know the value of your own rituals. You don't know the value of your own temples. That's why you keep postponing it or deferring or just not thinking about it and just not thinking how valuable it is. Now that ritual universe has to be reinstated in order to have a culturally beautiful, happy India. Because all arts are part of that ritual. What else is drama? What else is painting? What else is poetry? It is making a ritual relationship with somebody else. What else is bhakti? So, what we have done is we have developed a Protestant Hinduism for ourselves, where people like Shashi Tharoor, they only say, oh, I'm this, I'm that, I can do this, I can do that. Hinduism gives me great variety, it has a marvelous intellectual fit, But you don't do anything. When somebody asks you, do you go to the temple and spend time? Then you say, no, I don't need to do it because Hinduism says do it or don't do it. I'm still a Hindu. So what do? Do you do mantra jap? Do you do asana pranayam? No, I do nothing. I just sit back and speculate and write books and talk about the idea of India. And I just talk about how the majority Hindus should treat the minority Muslims. And I talk about the tolerance of Hinduism. But practically I will not do anything. Now this is the biggest problem. All religions, which are not just religions of faith or belief, but religions of practice. Whether it is the religion of African tribes, Australian tribes, American Indians, Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, Pashupatas, Vaishnavas, whatever, they all believe in a sadhana. They all believe in manasa, vacha, karmana, action. And the India which was created for us by Jawaharlal Nehru was totally bereft of this. Whatever India survived from ancient times and wanted these things to be done was looked down upon him. It was looked down upon by him. By him. He looked down upon these things. He thought modernity was becoming more and more faith-like Christian or faith-like socialists. So you keep religion outside, more or less. You treat religion as if it's the opium of masses, as Marx said, and you have a secular life. Now that's what has caused the immense damage to Hinduism. And that is why you have an education system without arts. Now we all know that it was in 1835 or so, I think, that Macaulay started this whole thing. New education policy of that British times, and in that he did not want you to read philosophy or culture or arts or religion or anything. He just wanted you to read mathematics, some little bit of language and science, so that you could be second-rate or third-rate administrators under the white administrators. And that thing continued, and a lot has been talked about it. I need not waste my breath on that anymore. But the crux of it is, to this day, no university in India, no school in India considers arts as essential curriculum. चौथी क्लास में भी नहीं होता, 8वीं में नहीं होता, 10वीं, 11वीं, 12वीं में नहीं होता, फर्स्ट ईयर ऑफ कॉलेज, MA, PhD, कुछ नहीं. There are no departments of art, no departments of theatre, painting, sculpture, anything. Because art is considered as something non-essential to a modern Indian way of life. And art, along with philosophy and religion, has been categorized as Hindu, and therefore it is unacceptable, because modern India should discard everything Hindu. Now, when you don't have arts, then your administrators, your IAS, IFS, your judiciary, your professors, your judges, they all become unfamiliar with the practices and the lives of the people of the country. And so when they pass judgments in the courts, or when they give directives as executive officers, they always go against the real needs of the people and cause endless conflicts. They operate along the colonial model, the model of the 19th century governance, which was a colonial model. So the ritual universe, education without art, and total lack of establishing Sanskrit as the essential repository of Indian learning. So because you wanted a secular state, so you could not have a language like Sanskrit as the fulcrum of education in India. You couldn't have it because it was categorized as a Hindu language. Now, I'll take a parallel. You go to the modern Greek state, the present Hellenic Republic, Democratic Hellenic Republic, modern Greece. modern Greece preserves Greek as the fulcrum of its culture. They don't say this Greek is pre-Christian. Most Greeks today are Christians. There is nobody who follows the religion of Apollon or Zeus or Hera or any other ancient god. So they are all modern Christians, but they preserve their language. And because they preserve their language, they preserve modern Greek, medieval Greek and ancient Greek. Through the language, they preserve their identity as culture. So they are reconstructing the temple of Athena for the last 100 years. They removed the church which was there, they removed the mosque which was there. Do you know that at Parthenon, they removed both of them? Because when the Christians invaded, they broke down portions of the ancient temple of Athena and they put in a church there. And when the Muslims came, they put in a mosque there. So when modern Greeks who are not Christian, who are Christians, who are not followers of ancient Olympian religion, what did they do? They removed both of them. And they have started reconstructing the ancient temple of Athena made in 600 BC as it was, and making every effort to restore it. So they have an identity which goes back to their history. Whereas in India, the story is exactly the other way around. We know the whole struggle of Ram Mandir, no point in my saying anything about it. But then there is the struggle of thousands of other temples waiting to be taken care of. But the point I'm driving at is very simple. That we have not taken a native model of culture. We have taken a colonial model of culture. And no political party in India to this day, I dare say, has given up that colonial model and restored in letter and spirit the native, the Bharatiya model. Along with this, there is the big problem of proselytization. We all know that. Unfortunately, for the last 1 week, the television is full of several very unpleasant news and developments on this front. Now, we have not been able to understand something very simple about Christianity and Islam, that they are proselytizing religions. They are not religions which treat any other religion, not just of India, but of the world, on an equal footing. They do not believe in equality of religions, equality of philosophies, equality of experience. They believe in exclusiveness. And so, they believe in proselytizing and converting the rest of the world to their sect, to their sampradaya. And they're living in that pramad of the sampradaya, in that arrogance. So Christians would like to convert the whole world to Christianity. Muslims would like to convert the whole world to Islam. And there they would be in a conflict with whatever other faith or religion or cultural commitment people have, which does not fall in, which is something different from Islam and Christianity. Now this is something we have to realize. Now we made a model in which we said that Muslims and Christians who are part of Indian population will have certain rights. And in Article 25 we said that everybody would have the right to profess practice and propagate. Unfortunately, about the last word propagate, there has been no clarity. Should propagate mean convert? Or should it only mean talk about it? I can talk about the beauty, the glory, the goodness of the faith that I live, that I profess and practice. But does that give me the right to tell others that you will go to hell and that you need to be saved? That is something prima facie inhuman. And so the Constitution has somewhere or the other fallen short of this clarity. And Article 25 needs to be amended now. We have to make it very clear, and that propagation does not mean insulting others, belittling other faiths, and using unfair means, using means of bribery or unfair means of converting people into your faith. So this is one of the major issues, and this has been spelled for 100 years very clearly as one of the major problems of India. The next thing that I want to talk about is the next thing that I wish to talk about is the teacher. You see, the ancient Indian system, till the arrival of the British, was based upon a direct relationship of the student with the teacher. Of course, the student was located in an institution, whether that institution was a Gurukul, a small Gurukul of 10 teachers or 100 teachers, or a university of 2,000 teachers or 3,000 teachers like Udantashila or Nalanda. But the relationship was always based upon an individual acharya and the student, or the Batuka as he was called, the one who was studying, the student. It was the duty of that particular teacher to take into his fold the student, not only for the period of study but for the whole life. And it was the duty of the teacher of the student to regard the teacher as the guide for rest of his life. And it was not just one teacher you had. You could have 5 teachers, 10 teachers, and most brilliant people had several teachers. As the story of Dattatreya goes, he had 18 teachers. But it was always a deep personal relationship of lifelong commitment. That you had to give something to the student. You were not just there to draw a salary or serve in an institution. Now what the British did, the British came and they established a modern college in which the head was a principal who was appointed by the government. It was very different from the head of the teaching institution who was elected or who was decided upon as a teacher by the institution. The institution, whatever that institution may be and whatever may be the special subject taught at that Gurukul, but the head of the Gurukul was somebody who was elected, chosen, decided upon by other 4, 5, 10, 20 upadhyayas or teachers. And it was an independent unit. Let us say teach till at least class 8 or 9. some 2 or 3 arts in a practical way in every school in India, not just exclusive schools, but every school in India, this kind of a dissociation with Hindu thought and culture would disappear. And you should teach those arts in the language and the activity of that particular region. So if the school is in, let us say, Bhubaneswar or Cuttack, then all that you should teach those arts, you should teach what is being lived there by the people. You shouldn't worry about an all India phenomena and things like that. And secondly, my idea of education is very radical, and I would say that instead of talking a lot about change in terms of skill, why not make it compulsory that every school in India, from class 6 to class 12, for 7 years, teaches one particular skill to everybody in that school, so that when the girl or the boy who passes out at finishing the 12th class is able to earn something. So you can have motor mechanics, you can have computer repairers, you can have 150 to 200 such skills. And every school should teach at least one skill, and that should be compulsory for everybody. And I'm sure that with modern technology, you can do it up to the level of what is called ITI. Not IIT, ITI. So that you can produce really skilled people. So with these two fundamental things, of course this would require a big investment in the educational field. Maybe it would require 20% of our national GDP or whatever, but it would have immense returns. And let everything be more regional than centered. Of course, controlled by the center, organized by the center, supervised by the center, but expression and learning should be at the level of the region. And so people will learn the languages more. As for English, I would say that if it is compulsory for every bureaucrat to know at least 2 Indian languages other than his or her mother tongue before entering the exam, and if that is a compulsory condition for bureaucratic services, for judicial services, for academic services, this whole situation will change. And once the Indian languages assert more, people will also accept Sanskrit in a bigger way, because they'll realize that it is the most practical language. It's the easiest language for not national unity only, but for national interchange, all kinds of interchange. I mean, this is very different kind of a thinking, but after my years and years of experience as a teacher, this is what I think. We should talk less and we should work something practical.
So can we quickly take 3 questions in 15 minutes? I'll ask Deepanjali ji to unmute.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Meributji, for another wonderful lecture. This is the second one I'm attending of yours. I actually don't have questions, but I thought I would make some observations which might be instructive and useful to everyone. The point that you mentioned about the temples, used to be the center of art. I think that is more true of the north, where, as Niraj C. Chaudhary rightly wrote, that there has been a destruction of Aryavrat totally. Whereas in the south, the temples are very much following that. it is a great honor for a girl to do her arangetram, for example, in noted temple. They book the space. So there's a special sort of manchek hai, jahan pe performances hoti hain. वो सब है. The temples, the big temples have educational institutions as well attached to them, such as Tirupati and many other larger temples. Which is not to say that everything, all is well in the south with regard to temples. The same issue of the control of temples is a problem. But as a center of art, it does continue. So my point is that I know what you mean about the school and the teacher being important. But what I feel is also that the home and the family is where these cultural values have got to be imparted. Now I'll give my own example. I grew up in Bangalore and went to a Methodist school. Right? So school with obviously there is no Bharati influence in that sense. But my father was very keen. So from the age of 6, I have learned classical music and Bharatanatyam and everything else up until, just like what you were saying, up until like about 10th standard or so. So that naturally then gives us a certain exposure. And this is true actually in the south of people from most religions. Most of the people who are, Christians, who are, more forward-looking, they will be also part of this because the whole ecosystem supports that. In the 10 years or so that I've lived in Delhi, what I've noticed is that यहाँ पे वो ecosystem नहीं है. अभी भी वो ecosystem is more, veering towards this whole Urdu, and I actually know Punjabi families here who have all their children, like their 3 children, they're all given Persian names. I mean, you're Hindu, why do you have to give Persian names to all your children? That is the sort of thing, because that's sort of, there is a sort of more of a buying into that. So there's no pushback, is what I observe in the north.
Yeah, you see, but
so to bring back our customs, there's got a lot more to be done. There's got to be art forms. Like the south, even in the east, there is more of an importance in learning dance and music. So that sort of continues. But
remember,
there is no such.
But remember, yeah, I understand that comparatively, temples are preserving more art, but no temple in the south offers archana to the deva, to the devata through dance. You see, the act which the British made in 1935 or something, that there will be no dance in temples, is still the legal situation. There is no temple in the south in which you really do a puja through dance. This is very important. देखिए, सुनिए, still try it. I mean, I have been to Jagannath Puri and talked to the head administrator there, and even to the Vidwans. कि भाई आप दिन में 3 बार, why don't you literally allow, just as the pujari recites mantras, why should a dancer, why should 2 or 3 dancers not do it 3 times a day? And they find it, the idea, they find it very disturbing. So, and this is true of South also. You see, there has been a very big divide. Of course, people are preserving it better in South. We know it. And thank God that they are preserving. I mean, I'm always a great lover of South. And I mean, I have great admirers in the Brahmins at Music Academy Madras because I say such things. So they like me for it. But then they are not able to do anything in the temples there. Because temples are in the hands of totally hostile Christian Islamic people. So that's once it is removed at an all India basis. You see, the states will never liberate the temples. It's only the parliament in New Delhi which, by bringing a central act and asking the Supreme Court of India to really examine the matter dispassionately, that this can happen. Once that happens, your temples in the south will become 10 times more beautiful and productive and helpful to the poor people. to the lower middle class. Because you would have the wealth and the system to do it, and you won't have these people like T.M. Krishnan, who go on creating hostile and very acerbic views about dance and about Carnatic music. And also people should be asked to come and sing. I mean, I don't understand why even today, like 5 young upcoming musicians cannot sing in the evening and do an archana. If it's a Rama temple, then sing Tyagaraja. If it's a Devi temple, then sing Muthuswami Dikshita. If it is a Padmanabhan temple, then sing Swati Tirunal. This can be done even now. But because you have an administrator, an IAS, and somebody who is anti-Hindu, this cannot happen. So I take your point that yes, we have a lot more preserved, but let us preserve it and let it flower more. It's our duty to make it flower more. Yeah.
Which adds to it that offering dance to the presiding deity in the temple is not allowed since the abolition of the Devdasi Act.
Yeah.
I'll go to Amay for the next question, and we might not be taking follow-up questions if really wants to say something.
Not a question at all. It's just another observation, which about schools.
So maybe we can reserve it for later, for after the questions.
Okay.
Amay, please ask your question. Amay, you're not audible. I have unmuted you, but you're not audible. In fact, I can't hear anybody. भरत जी, आप कुछ कह रहे हैं?
नहीं, मैं कह रहा हूँ कि ये इनका वैशाली का माइक नहीं काम कर रहा।
Ask you to unmute again, Amay. Please speak now.
हाँ, अब ये अनम्यूट हो गई लगता है।
No, we can't. So probably you can write your question in the chat box. I'll ask on your behalf. आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही। Now you are audible.
अब आ गई।
Sorry, issue. Okay, so I had 2 questions, but the second question was actually dependent on the first one. So my question is pertaining to the best case for individuals like me. So a modern individual, like someone in my 20s, and we have. Okay, now are you saying something, because I can't hear you now? Okay. So my question is pertaining to someone in their 20s who have their own life ahead of them, and we acknowledge that there are these problems. We have hijacked temples, teachers are stooges of the government, and the government has departed from the dharmic values. We can totally understand that. But as an individual, I am quite powerless. I mean, I can't. And as an individual, I can't bring about these changes, and I'm torn between problems such as managing my finances or aesthetics. So someone in 20s, we have to make sure that we have a stable job. If we don't have that, we can neither contribute to our aesthetics nor we can have a nice life. So in that case, where do you see this going? So is the best case situation for us to settle elsewhere, outside India, and maybe bring your culture with yourself? So should Hindus become the next Jews? Or what should an individual do, an individual Hindu do in such situation? That is my question.
Now, Hindus cannot follow the example of Jews. Secondly, there is no need for Hindus to do that. I mean, we have 1 billion of them right here. They should simply take control of their own land, whatever land they have control of now. So, of course, they should learn from the Jews how to revive. Jews can teach us, and how to defend, and also how to attack when necessary. So those are very essential things you can learn from Jews. Right now, Jews are not anti-idolatry. I have had talks with some of their very deepest scholars like Rabbi Sparber and all that at the instance of Swami Dayanand Saraswati for 4 or 5 days. I mean, I know that the temper is very different, so we can learn a lot from them, and they can be of very great help to us. But we have to work our own way. All we need is a little bit of courage. हिंदी में कहें, थोड़ी सी हिम्मत चाहिए और कुछ नहीं चाहिए. all Hindus need is a little bit of courage. Because you are not demanding anything unfair, unjust, because you are not robbing anybody of anything else. Even if you are asking some fanatic Muslims to behave, then you are only asking them to mind their own ways, not to interfere. So Hindus, because they have in the whole ecosystem lost their courage, and political parties have not been able to restore them. So they must now on their own stand up and ask the political parties also to deliver. That's what I would say. We have everything. We have everything. We have even people who are willing to sacrifice. It's just a matter of creating that momentum. And that momentum has not been created because somewhere or the other our leadership is too preoccupied with Gandhiism or with certain Arya Samaj values or with certain funky reformist ideas about Hinduism. They still think that Hinduism is to be reformed like Brahmo Samaj used to do it. So you have to exorcise yourself of that Christian ghost. It's not a holy ghost. It's a very ecumenical, organizational ghost which has entered you in order to make you incapable of defending yourself. That's my observation.
Dr. Surendra Bhargavji for the next question.
Dr. Gupta,
Sir.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can, sir.
I have two questions.
Yes.
Although partly you have answered, I have for a long time wanted how we can inculcate pride in the common man for our country. You have answered it partly, but I want a focused way that even a small citizen, common man, he develops pride in the country to make the country strong in different ways. Like China has done in the last 20-30 years. This is the first part.
Yeah.
Any suggestion? Second part is about the temples. I studied the minority institutions in the country, and we arranged a lecture in the India Habitat Center in Delhi. Now my suggestion is, and you can make it more focused, that until there is a social pressure of individuals on the political parties, whether BJP or anyone else, to free the temples by bringing the rot which has come in by the administrators, and how it can be better if it is they are open as they were earlier. Nothing will be done. So, any comments, any suggestions, any guidance on these 2 points?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. These are very crucial things that you have pointed out. Now, regarding the first, you see, whether we admit it or not, our common man is a highly oppressed man. And because he is oppressed, even as a Muslim, even as a Christian, and of course as a Hindu he is oppressed by the bureaucracy, he is oppressed by the politician, he is oppressed by the judiciary. And unless you bring about some very major changes in the powers of all these three, you see, these people are oppressive because they have special powers, too many special powers. And once you start questioning them, it is time to question. Why should The politician have all these advantages in the name of democracy, that he or she can cross the floor anytime, bring down an elected 10 MPs, bring down an elected government. The law should change. See, these are some of the major flaws in our democratic practices. This is something which is going to bring succor to the common man. Also, we have given too much protection to the bureaucrat. An IPS officer or an IAS officer can just about do anything, wrong you, make you suffer for a lifetime, and he gets no punishment. You see, he can suspend you wrongly and you can go on fighting in courts, and after 20 years you get something. He is not blamed, he is not pulled. So there is a lot that has to be changed now in terms of the service condition, relationship of the bureaucracy, the judiciary and the administration vis-a-vis the common man. So this is my answer regarding the rights of the common man. We keep talking about freedom, but we are not really providing any freedom. Regarding the temple, I think, sir, they have to be handed over back to Hindus. Now many people have created several models. People like T.R. Ramesh and those who are experienced in this. I myself have long years and years of experience in temple management and construction, and I have made suggestions. It's not difficult to make new trusts at the local level where there are people who can manage the temple. You need some people with money there, you need some people with expertise of various kinds, not just administrative or financial expertise, but about Agama Shastra, about worship, about practices, about religion, all those, and that is available. It is largely a matter of constituting those things and doing it. I am sure people will learn a lot as they go along. But what we have is a vested interest and also some kind of a confusion. For instance, I know the RSS thinks that just as there is a Gurdwara Act, there should be a Hindu Act to administer most Hindu temples. So there are problems with our so-called advocates of Hindu interest, who have very little experience and understanding of culture. But it is high time that they work out something. You cannot wait for much time. In another 10 or 15 years, 3/4 of the land of every Hindu temple would be gone, let me assure you, whether old or ancient or modern. Even in cities like Delhi, Hindu temples are being besieged by all kinds of occupation around them, which is eventually going to destroy them. And then hundreds and thousands of acres of land of old temples like Tirupati, etc., it has been taken away by the governments. Yeah, I think.
Bharti has the follow-up question.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah.
Thank you.
You have to be very quick.
Yeah, not a follow-up question at all. It's just an observation about what Sir had said about the teachers in the schools, which is very true. That our systems are not there. But I've worked now in MCD and government schools, Delhi government schools, for about 5-6 years, and I was very pleasantly surprised to see that there are many good teachers who are raised and themselves brought up in a certain way. तो वो क्या करते हैं जब वो बच्चों को सिखाते हैं, तो all these things come in even if they are not part of your syllabus or curriculum.
Yeah.
चाहे वो there is a way to pray, there is a way to certain sanskar which they bring in, which is coming through them, through their individual. And we will at least have this, like you rightly said, for the next 10-15 years that I think we can have it. But after that is the worry. That was my observation. On an optimistic note, that's how I think Indian Hindu society is still sort of chugging along. Because ये लोग हैं who try to make a difference, who sort of put in our cultural values, even though it's not part of a syllabus or curriculum. That's my observation. as well.
It's true. It's true. There are many good souls who are trying to save and salvage.
There was a good sharing I wanted to make. We edited it out after recording. When we were talking about temples being the center of culture, about 3 years ago I went into the heart of Mewar, about 90 kilometers off Udaipur, to a small little village called Garbu. जहाँ पे मेवाड़ has 4 major temples जिनको मेवाड़ के 4 धाम कहते हैं. One of them is called Charbujana. That is the first form of Krishna. जो form उन्होंने देवकी को दिखाया था जेल में, चतुर्भुज रूप. So the temple is called Charbujana. The deity, the murti was installed there, स्थापित की गई थी by a shepherd who brought it from somewhere in Dwarka and all. उन्होंने वो स्थापित की and he prayed that may my tribe increase. And the current population of the village is about 300 with extended families, जवाई वगैरह बहुएं वगैरह मिला के it's about 500. All of them are the same clan. They are all cousins and second cousins among themselves because it's the same tribe. Vishali is nodding her head properly. She knows about this. Small little village. It has never been captured even by Shivaji, even by Marathas. They say कि हमारे North Goa के अंदर कोई आ ही नहीं सकता कभी भी. So the temple is the center of all life in that. I stayed there for about 20 days. In a small little akhada. I was the only woman there. And all the activities revolve around the temple. अभी आप सुबह की आरती में नहीं आए, चलो आपको प्रसाद दे जाते हैं. And सब खेती वेती उसके आसपास ही होती है. The daily activities revolve around that. The festivals revolve around that. The education, the singing, the dance, the culture, everything. And those people are proud. They say कि आज तक हमारे गांव में कोई भी किसी भी बच्चे को कोई ऐप नहीं है. Nobody drinks, nobody smokes, even the extended family. And that kind of pride जो हमने सारे जहाँ से अच्छा वाला, I can see every time you sit with a villager, सबसे पहले वो आपको बताएगा how beautiful their village is. कभी किसी बच्चे में गुजर नहीं किया. That pride, nationalism. So what you were talking about, that temples were not just places of worship. It is an entire way of life in that small place.
Exactly.
That I'll bring the talk to a close. Thank you very much for joining and thank you very much for hearing my last sharing. And Rohit ji says in ancient times, entire towns used to try to do a temple. Thank you so much, Bharat ji.
Thanks everybody.
Now, this is the first in this part, in this series. We have 2 more talks again based on the same book.